Storytime by Kay. Thank you, Kay, for sharing your story. So story time about how my crusty musty rusty teacher tried to tell me off for nothing. Okay, so a little background information. I was having an argument with my classmate aka partner about a group project. He wanted our splash pad color theme to be red, white, and blue, but he disagreed and said it should be blue and yellow. We were just going on and on until our group leader said she liked my idea. So we were gonna do blue and yellow, and my partner, who we will just call Luke, went over to the teacher. He told the teacher that I called him a brat and was ugly, but guess what? The teacher actually believed him. And then the teacher came over to me. Miss Girl really said, "Why are you treating your partner like this?" At that point, everyone had stopped what they were doing and just looked at us. I simply said, "Huh," but I knew that Luke told her lies. She said, "You know what you did to Luke." Also, I forgot to mention that Luke is also her son. Anyways, I just said, "No ma'am, he was arguing with me and Cameron. By the way, that's the group leader." She said she didn't believe me still, of course, and I was sent to the principal's office. But your girl ain't going down without a fight. So I asked my secretary to pull up my classroom's security cameras. She asked me why, but I just told her to do it. She did, and I pulled out my phone to record what happened. I thanked the secretary and went back to class. I went up to my teacher's desk and showed her the video, and when I did, she got up and said, "I know this is edited." And she said, "Why aren't you in the principal's office?" She took my phone and told us she was going to the office to drop off my phone. When she came back, I saw that she was annoyed and gave me my phone back. She told her son he was grounded for lying and apologized to me, but I didn't accept. Haha, that's it, y'all. Thanks for listening.
So in December of 2019, I found out that I was pregnant and I was so excited. And my boyfriend was overjoyed. We literally had one of the best relationships during this time. But once COVID hit in 2020, I ended up getting laid off of work. He continued to work, but I felt like it was pointless for me to find another job just because I was about to have a baby and raise a kid. And in April, we get to find out the gender, and guess what? It was a boy. I was extremely happy, but then I just started to notice that he stopped caring. Like, I would be like, "Hey, the baby is kicking," and he would just be like, "Okay." Completely monotone, completely blank face. Then June comes around and I ended up gifting him an iPhone 11 Pro Max. Since it was under my name, I had access to see who could text and call him. And I know a lot of his family's numbers, including cousins and aunts, but there was one number that I didn't recognize that stood out the most. And the messages between him and this number would not stop until 3 a.m., which is when he would go to sleep. So I decided to go up and ask him who is more important than me and his son. Storytime part 2 on my boyfriend cheating on me with his coworker and his ex. So his response to me asking who is more important than me and his son is, "No one, babe." I just said okay, and a couple months go by and I go into labor. He's not even excited and doesn't even try to care. A few months later, and I see that number pop back up again. I also noticed that there was an exchange of pictures going on. So I decided to call the number up and be like, "Hey, who is this? How do you know my boyfriend?" And she responded with, "Who is this and why do you need to know this? Because I'm with him." I was bawling and I tried to confront him on it, but he literally denied it. And then he threatened me because I don't work that he would take my son away and get full custody. And because of all this crap, I just shut up and agreed to make it work for our son. And then not even a few weeks later, I see that number pop back up again and I lose my ish. Now, I don't condone violence, but the second that this man got home, I was so upset that I ended up punching him and he fell into the wall. I went through his phone and ended up finding out that he was also talking to another girl as well. So I whipped the phone around in his face and I was like, "Who is this?" Storytime part 3 to my boyfriend cheating on me with his ex and coworker. Now that I officially have this man's phone, I can see everything. When I asked him who the first girl was, he was like, "No one." And I was like, "No, straight up, who is she?" And he finally admitted that she was a coworker. So I go through his pictures and I see that they took selfies together, like really close selfies, and he also took a pic of her butt. There's literally a whole video where she's shaking it for him. I started bawling and I threw everything at him. I left the house for several days. We agreed to try to fix things again, but I'm taking his paychecks and messing around with his cousin now to get revenge on him. And honestly, him and his cousin look a lot alike, so if I ever were to get pregnant again, he wouldn't even question it. Also, if you didn't catch on, the other girl was his ex-girlfriend, and she still reaches out asking him for money and asking him to move in with her. And even when we were trying to work things out, he would constantly think about leaving our family for her.
Story time about how my neighbor killed my dog. So a little background information. When I was about 3 years old, my parents got me a German Shepherd. And my neighbors who lived next to us absolutely loved our dog. And so did their kids. Like, their dad literally put a doggy door in the fence so that way our dog could go back and forth from our house to his house. Well, when I was about 8 years old, my neighbors decided to sell their house. So he told us that he had to take out the doggy door because the people that were buying his house hated animals. Well, the people who had just bought his house, they ended up moving in before he could take out the doggy door. So our new neighbors asked us if we could put like a piece of plywood in front of the door so that way our dog couldn't get through. And they said that they would do the same to their side of the fence. So my dad said, yeah, he put a piece of plywood in front of there. Well, my dog, Gabe, the one night that my brother let him out, he ended up getting the plywood off of the doggy door. Well, my brother literally had to crawl through the doggy door to get the dog before one of them saw him in the yard. Part 2 about how my neighbors killed my dog. So like I said, my brother let the dog out and my dog got the piece of plywood off of the door. And my brother had to crawl through the doggy door to get my dog out of our neighbor's yard. So that way our neighbors wouldn't wake up and know that he got through. But whenever my brother went to go get Gabe, he realized that my neighbors didn't even have a piece of plywood on their side of the fence or anything. So my brother told my dad, and my dad went over there the next day to talk to them. And he pretty much said, I'm not going to have a piece of plywood on my side of the fence if you're not going to be doing anything on yours to prevent my dog from going into your yard. And they were like, oh, well, your old neighbors never took out the doggy door. And my dad was like, that's not our fault. Well, then our new neighbors said, if your dog all of a sudden becomes sick or just does not come back, don't be surprised. My dad decided to replace the door himself. Well, once Gabe realized that the doggy door was gone, when we would let him outside, he would literally just sit there and bark at the fence. Well, 2 weeks later, Gabe ended up passing away. And we found out it's because our neighbors were giving him rat poison.
Embarrassing story time about how I was catfished for 3 years. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I'm a super shy person. I have such a hard time talking to guys. So one day my friend suggested I do online dating. So I went home and I signed up to a bunch of dating apps. This is when I started meeting a bunch of guys online. And it was much easier to speak to them through there than in person. So one day I get a message from this really cute guy. He asked me for my Instagram and we started messaging each other through there. His profile was full of pictures of him traveling with his dog and his family. He had a Range Rover and even said he was a doctor. Like literally my dream man. After a few weeks I was completely head over heels in love. And he told me he felt the same way. But we had never even had a phone conversation. That's when I asked him if we could talk on the phone. He told me he was in surgeries all day, so we would have to reschedule. I believed it. He then ghosted me for a full week. When he came back, he apologized and said he's been really busy. So I decided to call him. And you won't believe what happened next. Part 2 of how I got catfished for 3 years. So like I said in part 1, he ghosted me for a full week. When he came back, he said he was just busy. So I called him. And a man with a strange accent answered on the other side. He told me that my boyfriend left his phone in the bathroom and that he happened to find it. And I believed it. A few hours later, I get a message from my online boyfriend saying that he's sorry he missed my call. He said he was really busy for the rest of the week, so he wouldn't be able to talk on the phone. I was so in love that I just believed everything he said, which I know is so stupid. After that, we just messaged each other through WhatsApp for months. Then I asked him to send me some pictures. And he basically sent me screenshots of his Instagram pictures. So I asked him to send me a selfie. Obviously, I wasn't suspecting anything, but I just wanted to see his face. So he sent me a really bad quality picture and I couldn't really even make out the face. That's when he said the camera on his phone wasn't working, which is why he sent me screenshots of Instagram. Again, I believed it. A few days later, he asked me for money, and when I asked him why, he said he was short on funds. So I sent him $3,000. Then he sent a really angry message saying I should have sent more. Part 3 of how I got catfished for 3 years. Claim this is not my story time, it's sent to me on Instagram. So I sent him $3,000. A few hours later, I get an angry message from him saying that I should have sent more money. He even called me the B word. I was super heartbroken because I couldn't believe he was talking to me like that. So like an idiot, I apologized and sent $2,000 more. So in total, I'd given him $5,000. I asked him again what he needed the money for, and he said that his money was tied up in investments. A few days later, he apologized and told me the money came through. Before I knew it, almost 3 years had passed. He kept using COVID as an excuse not to be able to travel to see me. And yes, he did ask me for more money, so in total I had sent him about $20,000. A month ago, I told him that for my birthday, I wanted to go see him. That's when he sent me a message saying that I was too much and he couldn't handle the relationship anymore. I called him again and the same weird voice answered. That's when he told me that he had been lying to me this whole time and he was actually a 70-year-old French man. He told me to leave him alone and hung up. I'm totally heartbroken and I have no way of getting that money back. What should I do?
Story time! This is how I got revenge on my sister for sleeping with my husband. So before my ex-husband and I told our family that we were getting a divorce, I decided to throw a little party. Of course, he wasn't invited, but I told my family I had something very important to tell them. This was all the weekend before Easter. Yes, 2021. And I told my sister that she had to be there because I had something very, very important to tell all of them. What my ex-husband didn't know is that I went through his phone and I found all her pictures. I went online and I bought a projector and I made a little movie with all of her pictures. Also screenshots of our conversation on Bumble. How fun. Well, the weekend came and I was regretting all of it. But as soon as she got to my house, she asked for my ex-husband. And I was like, oh hell no, this is not going to happen. I got drinks for all of my family. My parents were there, cousins, uncles, aunts, just everyone. I Got Revenge on My Sister for Sleeping with My Husband Part 2. So like I said, I got a projector and I set it up right in the middle of my backyard because I had told everyone that it was movie night. Well, the time comes for movie night. Everyone gets comfortable, everyone has some popcorn, everyone has some drinks. The perfect setup. I named this little movie Our Love Story. As soon as the movie started, everyone was like, "Aw," but they didn't know that it was going to take a really dark turn. First slide was how we met on Bumble. Then all the pictures of her came up. Everyone was shook, no one moved. Then all her videos came up with my husband when she was forgot to mention his mom and his sister was there, and my sister's husband. Close to the end of my little movie, everyone got up and was walking away. I told them, no, stay and watch the end. And then the screenshots of the conversation came up and just one last picture of them together. Thanks, sis.
Story time on how I found out I was adopted. So growing up, I felt so different from my family, and the treatment was off as well. So my mom is white and my dad is black, and my brother and sisters are all biracial, and at the time I thought I was too. My older brother and sister were both light-skinned, they had light eyes, they had curly or wavy hair, and same thing for my little sister. But she honestly looked like a white girl. I mean, if you would straighten her hair, you would have thought that she was just white. And she looked more like my mom than anything. But me on the other hand, I turned out completely different. I forgot to mention, but my dad is light-skinned as well. I was dark-skinned, I had the regular dark brown eyes, and my hair was extremely kinky, and I recently found out that I have 4B hair. And I never understood how I turned out this way, and the rest of my family was light-skinned. I don't know, I just sometimes felt like I didn't belong in the family, and I wasn't pretty enough. And I definitely sensed something was off because my grandmas and aunts and uncles treated me way different. And I could tell I wasn't their favorite. Sorry, I went on a rant. This is part 2 on how I found out I was adopted. So, like I said earlier, I look completely different from my family. Mom's white, dad is black. Anyway, so the day I found out. So, one time in class, we were doing Punnett squares. And at the time, I was in 8th grade. We did Punnett squares with our parents, height, hair, skin, eyes, everything. But my Punnett squares weren't adding up. Like, I didn't get the traits that I'm supposed to have. So, that day after school, I showed my mom the Punnett squares. And my mom said that they weren't accurate and that the Punnett squares aren't a real thing. So I just went on with life again, just thinking that it was fake and that the Punnett square theory was wrong. Then a week later, I went back to school and showed my friends, and I told them, and they said that the Punnett squares were accurate. Then one of them laughed and said, "You must be adopted or something." And when she said that, literally my whole world clicked. This is part 3 on how I found out I was adopted. So one of my friends said that I must be adopted, and like for a whole month, it was just sitting on me to ask my parents if I was. I was kind of scared because I didn't want to believe that I was actually adopted, but everything was starting to add up from how I looked to how my family treated me. And it's always just been so weird. So one night we were having like a family movie night, and I started crying in the middle of the movie. My dad had paused the movie and asked what was wrong, and I finally asked what's been bothering me. Am I adopted? And my mom looked over to me, and from that look, I could just tell. A couple days later, my parents sat me down and talked about it, told me I was from Kenya, told me about my real mom, and just things that I wish I should have known sooner. Because most of my life, I was questioning my existence. But now I'm 43 years old. I was able to find 2 sisters I had. They were both older than me, and they were also adopted. But I never got to meet my real mom because she passed away before I could meet her. But I'm glad to have met the sisters that I have.